Hi, my name's Eric Pulaski.
Okay.
Using reclaimed pipes. It's actually old oil and gas pipes of all things, so use those for the frame. Rusty old
32
tools
panels.
and implement stuff, welded it all up there. We had a bit of fun with that one.
So what total kilowatts on this whole system? Do you have a total on it?
Most of the panels are made in China, yes. Most of the solar panel components are made in China, and even your US made panels only have to be 55% made in America to be called American made. The other 45% is normally made in China.
Just like John Deere.
Yes, that one's 16 and 32, and then we can walk on down the hill.
Now, how many kilowatts is that?
Oh, River, work with me.
I'll take that one. He probably wouldn't want me. Can I hold you? Can I hold you? You look like you're ready for a nap.
Not online yet.
That's what you look like. Did you have a nap? Did you want another nap? I wish I had a little front backpack. I need a backpack for me.
Anyway, let's walk towards this other system. It's
Everybody, yeah.
Yeah, I know.
For whatever reason, I researched it heavily before doing it, and yeah,
Well, I mean, it ain't nothing. A piece of plywood or something.
Right, I could have thrown under there, but
yeah.
I looked into it just because I was curious, because I'd heard about the liquid lead acid being on concrete.
A lot of the old lawn or tractor barriers used to have people, you tell them, don't put them on concrete, you know, because they store them inside.
Nobody's ever been able to explain to me, like, the physics of why.
You got rebar in here.
Uh-huh.
Magnetic field. You know how your cell phones, you set them on a pad and charge?
Uh-huh.
Same situation.
Huh.
What I've been explained to, and it just
That makes the most sense I've ever heard.
It pulls the battery straight through.
Just grounds it through that.
Yeah.
He's a big battery fan.
Good.
Will it have electric heat then? Or?
This will be natural gas. He's got a natural gas well as well down here. So this system has a what's fun and exciting. There's these new generators out there now that they're tri-fuel generators. They'll do natural gas, propane, or gasoline. During the winter time, his natural gas pressure goes down, so he'll switch it over to propane. But most of the year, he's going to be able to just use his free natural gas to run the generator. And generators only pops on when his bed and breakfast people use the hair dryer and everything else all at once, kind of thing. Living in an off-grid system, you are your own power plant, so you have to think like that. You try to do all of your
Normal stuff.
Washing and heavier load stuff during the middle of the day while you have tons of solar. It's perfect time to do that. At night, not as such good time, but you get a random bed and breakfast person in here that doesn't know that, so that's why we put the backup generator in here, so it will keep the system happy no matter what, and they won't lose their own lights from using too much at once. So
What's the generator?
sit right here and right here. They had a part recall, so they had to go back to the manufacturer, and we got them back in yesterday. So of course I didn't have enough time to get them installed for today's tour. You can see all the big breakers and switches and stuff that you normally don't get to see because it's all tidied up and shut in a case. So nothing here is dangerous. You can't shock yourself. We're fixing to have this all tied back up, but till then, let's go see the generator, because I mean, it looks like a normal generator, but it is still kind of cool.
Is this a unit to control it?
Yeah, so you do all your programming through this guy. You see all of your output. And actually, let's go see that. I forgot about that. There's one of these at the other one, but it actually reads something because it's all hooked up.
They live in a little white farmhouse.
Maternity ward, did you? Little piggy too. Do you suppose that they undid this metal themselves?
Does he sniff you? Does he sniff you? We're going to keep our hands right here. Hey, pigger. Hey, little pigger.
Nice backup.
Helps it make a lot of sense, yeah. Because if you were having to pay for the fuel for backup for this, that would be not
feasible.
economical.
No.
You say you can put propane in this.
This is gas, and then this is the propane pickup over here. You don't put propane in there.
So these girls are gilts that haven't been bred before, and this is their first time down there in the mama area. What do you say, babies? What do you say, babies? Say hello to everybody.
They're talking about it.
Roscoe, kiss the pig. Kiss the pig, Roscoe.
You could convert your truck right now to run on propane.
Pig's bigger than you, Roscoe.
Yeah, Roscoe doesn't. He's not too much into the pigs. Gertie, she's all about it.
More delicious.
Two is the kind of like a two-rock cross. All their daughters are half-breeds. You know, we're up to 15, 16 pigs. And I've got a couple purebred hand gilts that'll purebred pigs. Look at those pigs. Would you look at those pigs? Yeah. So this we cleared off the space for this building and made a nice gentle slope there and sewed it all up with a lot of heavy clover mix. Like clover out your waist, they're just in there like eating clover like every other tomorrow. Look at her getting in there walking.
Yeah?
Silly girl.
Oh, yeah. Pigs are sloppy.
Engineering physics to make it switch it over is actually pretty simple. I don't know why they haven't had this for a long time, but now that they do, regardless. This is, I believe, a virtual sweat engine, and then the system was assembled in the U.S. But it's like one of those parts. Yeah, they make, this company makes the whole system. They don't, but they pull the parts from all different places. Yeah. Farmhouse, the other, or the bed and breakfast. There's a control panel inside, and we can see all the data that way.
Mm-hmm. We have pigs on 3 different farms other than this one, and we use like a solar panel charged system that can run off battery. The charger can run off battery, run off of plug-in electric, and we just power system with the panel. That's what we run. That's what we run with the motorbike.
Well, I was just wondering if you had a farm that's only in one spot, if you could just run your entire grid after you have a solar system.
Yeah.
On your grid with the one
Yep.
to keep your cows or whatever. You
Yep.
have back.
As soon as we get this place up and running, my intent is to get a charger to do that on this place and kind of design paddocks with switches so you don't have to electrify everything at the same time. You got to
grazing and stuff like that.
Yep.
Well, let's go back to the farmhouse.
Yeah, because that's a great one.
You just want it to go right in. There you go. Good job. Try to keep it from falling out. That's the tricky part. That's tricky but great.
Let's drink it.
Put one hand on the bottom.
Linda, you want a pop?
Squeeze from the bottom.
This is pop. We've got
Oh, yeah,
strawberry,
Papa.
There you go. Now
yeah, strawberry, cherry, mango. Those are my 3 flavors.
I don't like this one. I love you.
There we go. See if Grandma and Grandpa want So this is the meter that you can have in your house so you don't have to go down in the basement to know what's going on. Right now, they are using 4,000 watts and producing 4,100, 200 watts. So yeah, they're overproducing at the moment. Battery voltage is all full and happy. So this will just give you a moment to moment, tell you what's going on your system.
Do they have Wi-Fi here?
Didn't when I hooked it up, so I with the Ethernet. So, or this is the box that talks to the internet, so he can actually get this display on his phone as well.
Oh, wow.
So he can be in China and know what his solar system's doing.
Oh, I see. You wanted to get up on my... Silviculture.
Yes. Yep.
Not electrified.
Take the utility vehicle down to see the smaller pegs and the solar panels if you're interested to ride along.
I'm Lynn. I'm on the OFA board. How many of you were at the Dayton conference this year? First time with OFA? We're excited to partner with Rural Action. They always encourage board members to get out and do these tours and be there. They never have to encourage me much because I love them. But I was screening down through and I'm like, John Woods, Amesville. We have property about 1.5 miles from here, so I said, that's an easy one to do. And who had an idea that it would be this gorgeous of a day? I'm so glad we're all here. And I think you're all in for a treat to see Homecoming Farm and all the things that the Woods family has done here. It's going to be a great afternoon.
First and foremost, turn it over to John. This is John Wood.
How's it going, everybody? Oh, don't clap. Don't clap until you've seen how weedy it is. We're going to be walking around. We're going to start and end here. Talk a little bit about vegetables and then some flowers, and then we'll circle back to the other products as we move around. It's going to be really helpful for me to present the information that you want to hear. If I could just learn a little bit about who's here. So if you're a commercial producer, raise your hand. Thanks, kid. I knew that. Okay, great. What about like enthusiastic home gardeners? Or how about aspiring producers? Great. What about just enthusiastic customers of local food? It's kind of free reign here. We don't have like the secret chemical closet anywhere, so you're welcome to look anywhere and poke around. We made some homemade ice cream for you to have with some maple syrup. And we have a 1 mile trail around through the woods that we flagged. The farm crew is mostly me. Caitlin lives here with me and keeps me from doing anything too outrageous. And these are my parents, George and Marcia. And I thought, we bought this land when I was 5, so I wanted to have Dad just tell you really briefly what it was and what it looked like.
There's 110 acres here. We bought it 26 years ago. We found it by accident. I got lost riding my horse, ended up at the derelict house you saw at the corner, the guy who lived there then. My wife, Marcia, come here, would always insist that we take cookies to him, and one day he said, "You like this place so much, why don't you buy it?" And it's funny, because a year earlier I had said to Marcia, "Can we find a piece of land that we could just kind of take care of?" And it just walked into our laps. It was fairly worn out. What you see is a result of about 20 years of gradual management, and then the last 5 years under John's care, 5 or 6, really stepping it up. It had been used where you're standing now. There have been cattle grazed here pretty badly, up and down the hills. In fact, there's a field to the east of here can't get anything to grow on because I think they stripped all the topsoil off of it. When you came down the road, you saw where they quarried the rock, where I've been pushing out the autumn olive. They used to quarry rock down there for the area. We put in the ponds. The reason there's 2 is because the first one leaked. So the guy who put in the first one said, "Well, why don't you just put in a second pond and collect the leak?" So there's 2 ponds. My job here is to catch fish, shoot deer, and break equipment. I do really well on the third, as John will tell you. Marcia is in charge of everything beautiful here. She handles all the flower operations. And when John was a little boy, he will tell you that all my mom did was take me outside and answer all my questions. And I think that's why he's a farmer today. We hope you enjoy the day. As I said, there's ice cream here, old family recipe when you get done, and I'm finished.
Great. Question about buying the land or anything like that?
Well, I just wondered, what did your parents do? I mean, what's your background? What did you do before you bought this and decided to remodel it?
I'm a school teacher.
Oh, okay.
I'm superintendent of schools in the local school district now, but I was a college professor at the time.
I grew up on a dairy farm in Illinois, so I always had farming and gardening, and had always been a gardener, but I am a retired kindergarten teacher. I taught for 36 years, most of it in Amesville.
This is where our vegetables start their lives. Most things we direct seed, some things we transplant, and they start in here. And just throughout the day, one of the challenges that we are always working with, because I do 95% of the labor here, is to get everything like as simple and streamlined as possible. So I'll talk about efficiencies throughout the day. And the other big challenge is like starting from scratch. None of this infrastructure was here when I started. This was built using a Johnny's pole bender, generously loaned to me by Kale, who lives down the road. Built this at Lowe's for under, I think this whole thing cost less than $2,000, including hiring an excavator to trench water line to it. So these are chain link fence top rails, and they've been bent with a Johnny's brand pole bender, and then we just put it up on a frame to get it a little more headspace in here. In terms of efficiency, everything in here is on an irrigation timer. So we don't water in here, except for like once a week I'll go in with a hose and spot check things, make sure that the system's working. And they cost me about $100 for the 2 of them, but it saves 1 or 2 work weeks across the season that I don't have to be in here with a hose. There's overhead irrigation timers. It's pretty simple stuff.
Do you use fertilizer?
Yeah, you need to. And anytime you're using a soilless potting mix, there's not going to be enough nutrient in there. We don't fertigate in here. Yeah, the soil's been fertilized.
So this is all well water?
This is actually city water.
Okay.
We're like the last person on the Sunday Creek system. This is a capital expense, obviously, right, that we've built this, and we want to make it work for us all year. So the majority of the time we're using it really intensely is in the spring. And that bench over there just has like a really simple wall heater mounted on it, and it heats that bench off a gas well that's right here. Throughout the rest of the season, once we get all the transplants out, how do we utilize this to make money or improve the farm? And so this bed up here, the one with the weeds in it, is ginger, which is really pretty easy to grow. It's a really heavy feeder. It takes a long time to germinate, but we get seed from Hawaii, and then we grow it to a sushi ginger stage, which doesn't have a skin and it doesn't have fibers on the inside. It's super popular. Sells for 15 bucks a pound at the farmer's market, and like you can't keep it on your stand. On the back bench during the summer, I've got some ornamental plants that I'm growing for my own house. I've got blueberry cuttings that are being rooted. There's rhubarb that's being seeded. You can grow plants for sale or just perennials for the rest of the season. Briefly about starts, you won't find many pots in there because we do a lot of our small to mid-sized things, anything smaller than a pepper plant, in soil blocks. Soil blocks cost more to start with. You're not buying a whole bunch of plastic, but you're buying these kind of pricey tools, and they take longer to make up front, but they grow really great starts. We grew them on these flats. It's a compressed soil block. I have a big tool in there that presses out like 20 blocks at a time. This one just does 4. Those are pretty messy, but there's a block. They're actually, they're pretty robust. It doesn't take too long for them to fall apart. And the idea here is that you can't get a plant root bound in a cell that doesn't have walls. Go to Lowe's, buy a plant, you pull it out, and you see all these really robust roots filling the space. That's a really bad thing because they've reached the edge of their little habitat, and they're probably going to learn that that's the end of it for them, right? You can't expect a plant that has a really rough childhood to grow up into a really productive adult. Same thing, right? So what happens when the roots get to the edge of this is that they prune themselves as air pruning. They get there and they can't grow beyond the wall. At that point, you would want to either plant them in your garden or pot them up. They're not just going to perpetually be healthy like that, but they're ready to take off. They haven't wound themselves around in a little knot. Does that make sense? Where do I get my soil block makers? I bought mine from Johnny's. Okay. I do almost all my shopping at Johnny's just because it's like kind of one-stop shopping. If you want, you can actually size these up into larger blocks, or I just transplant them into the garden. So the blocks sit on plywood trays. Okay. And then these butt up against each other. Okay. The edges dry out if you don't butt them up against another tray. I bought these little ones. I never use these, but some people swear by them. This one's like a 20 tiny blocks. This one's one huge block. It's full of wasps. I should probably set that down. Clearly I don't use that one. And then this is the one that I use most of the time for things like head lettuce, kale, chard, beets if you wanted. Not as fast as filling trays, but it's actually faster to transplant these because you don't have to like work them out of their little cells. The other benefit is I don't have a huge stack of plastic anywhere in here at the end of the season.
How often do you have to replace the plastic?
Most of it's about like how much wind damage there is and how tight you put it on. So smaller structures with tight plastic can last a while. I haven't had to replace this and it's been here like 4 years. When I bought it, I just bought enough for 2. So if you have like a springtime failure in a windstorm, all your plants don't die that night because you're ordering plastic from wherever. Don't go to Lowe's and buy sheeting. I got this from Nolt's Greenhouse Supply. They're really friendly folks, N-O-L-T-S, Hershey, Pennsylvania. Super friendly on the phone. And then we've got shade cloth on top of it just to keep it a little bit cooler for that back bench during the summer. Most of the wear points are like right here. This is all put together. This is called wiggle wire. You put tracking on your wood and then put it in there.
You use it in the winter?
We use it in the winter just to grow some stuff for ourselves. We don't do winter growing for sale, so we'll have some lettuce and beets and carrots in here for our own consumption. Why the gas heating? Because in the spring, to germinate, if you can't get your substrate to like 70 degrees, most things are just going to sit there and rot. Not a very efficient system. You could do much better with like water lines that have hot water. But then there's hoops and another sheet of plastic that goes over. Okay. So at night we'll pull that over because we're not worried about the light, and we'll get to stay cool. This is oriented into the predominant wind. UV gain is great. You want to think about how to orient it for UV gain, but it doesn't matter if the wind strips your plastic off. The most violent winds come from the west here, so it's oriented into them. Also, it's vented with low vents on the windward side and high vents on the back side. We're going to walk over here and look at some flowers next.
How deep are your posts?
In our clay soils, I only put them in 2 feet. And then since I might want to be certified organic, these are all set in concrete. Unless you're using, like that's a locust post there. Yeah. This is a treated post. You're not supposed to use anything but metal or natural materials. I didn't know if I was going to be organic or not, so I stuck this in, but it's fully encased in concrete, so I'll probably get by the certification.
This started because when John was talking about selling at the farmer's market, I was thinking, well, who's going to go to his stall when all the other farmers have great things too? And I thought, flowers, wouldn't that bring people in? And I've always loved to grow flowers, so that gave me the excuse to start dividing a lot of things that I had at home, just that I knew went well in bouquets. I was thinking about what I was going to do after I left kindergarten, and this was a perfect project for me. And I don't have to make a living at it like John does, so it's kind of a supplemental, and at some point he'll decide whether it's worth keeping flowers or not. I'm hoping it is, so you can tell him that it should be. So I started with one area that's now under tarp because I got in a hurry and I planted things before the soil was ready. Most of the things down here are just things that I had at home that I just divided and divided. Or I'd go to White's Mill and I'd buy 2 of something that I knew I wanted and I would divide it out. I haven't really invested a lot of money in it, but I've invested a lot of hours in it. And then I started reading books about how to be an organic flower producer. A lot of the books, if you're reading those articles, are talking about producing for a market where you need to have gladiolas all the season long. So you need to succession plant, or you need to have baby's breath all the way along. And it finally dawned on me that I'm not doing that. I just need to have flowers all the way along. So right now, all my gladiolas are going to be all at the same time. We're going to have lots of gladiolas. People will buy them, hopefully, because they'll be beautiful and they want flowers. But I don't have to adhere to that model, which is a good model if you're producing for florists or something. We're only selling at the farmer's market, and occasionally someone will want bouquets for a dinner, and I'll just say, I can put together 15 bouquets for you, but they're not all going to match. And I'll say, okay. I have zinnia failure. I didn't know zinnias could fail, but they did. I went away for 5 weeks this spring. That wasn't the best plan, but whatever survives is what's going to be in the bouquets. Down there I have, from the outside, coneflower, coral bells. I'm tarping out an area that was just a weed mess, and I'm going to redo that one. And then up here I have dahlias and over to the yarrow. These are the perennials. When we get over to the raised beds, John lets me have 2 of his raised beds for my annuals. And I start some of them in the start house, and I had never done that before, and transplant them out, and then others I direct seed. So you'll see those when we get over there. There's also a great book of the organic flower farmer, and she has wonderful advice in it. If anybody's seriously thinking of doing this, which stage to pick things, what needs preservative, what doesn't need preservative.
Do you want to just talk about the learning curve of cutting flowers and like longevity?
For the bouquet?
Yeah, there's a lot to know about how to get your bouquet to last, and customers are going to be really disappointed if they take their bouquet home and it falls apart.
Yeah, I learned a lot of that from the book too. So what I do is I cut on Friday first thing in the morning, And when I cut, I strip the leaves at the time and I put them into buckets or containers that have a homemade preservative that is water with a little bleach, sugar, and vinegar. I have the proportions rather than you can buy the preservative, but this is way cheaper. So I cut them into that, and then I take them up to the Red Barn. John has a cooler and let them cool down. And then in the afternoon, I come back and I do the arranging and put them back in the cooler. So they're just a day out of the field when people buy them at the Saturday market. And there are some things that don't hold well in bouquets. There are some that are dirty and they kind of get the water gooky really quickly. Things like poppies are great, but they don't hold. So I just use the poppy heads. The dahlias, I've learned to torture them a little bit. I get really hot water, 160-degree water, and put them in there, and it seals them. And it's been a lot to learn about a few of the things. Most of the things are pretty tough perennials or annuals, and I also need long stems. So there are a couple things like that really sweet little red coreopsis there in the front. The stems are only this long, so I'm ripping it. I have learned from John to be a little bit more ruthless. I hated to give things away, dig things up. I would give them away, but I wouldn't just put them in the compost. And now I'm at the point that there are some live plants under that tarp down there, and I don't even care anymore because they were not working for me. The heavy bearded iris, they break off on the way to the market. They were just, I couldn't arrange them. The vase tipped over and broke. We had glass everywhere. So I'm being more ruthless about what works and what doesn't work.
What are you using for mulch?
A nice master gardener gave me 100 bags of leaves. I know. So some of them are still just around too. I used a little hay, and that was because I had a lot of seeds in it, but it was all I had at the time. When I started, I used the lasagna gardening. I put down horse manure and the newspaper. We had Sudan grass planted in one bed. Here I'm trying with the peonies using some burlap because they don't want to be heavily mulched, but just to keep the weeds down. Then I just kind of pick the burlap up and flop it over. I read it somewhere. I'm trying. If you have some suggestions, you can tell me.
So too much mulch has led to like a vole problem, though, and they can decimate your perennials.
Yeah.
So castor oil is the organic fix that we found. They don't like the smell of castor oil.
When I bought the castor oil, I got the unscented variety because I didn't know, and it has to be the scented variety.
On that one thing that I've noticed a lot about the book
Exactly the same size as the plot we're going to over there, just for reference. We'll talk about it over there. I neglected to say we've been doing this for 3 years. The first year we just sold a little bit. I had a full-time job just over the hill at Green Edge Organic Gardens, and I just gardened this right here. Last year was our first year trying to do this as my full-time job, although I did start some infrastructure before that. We're not certified organic, but we're gonna look into getting certification next year, and that means we've always followed the organic certification practices for pest control. We don't spray chemicals that would be outside of that certification. In fact, we haven't used any chemical pest controls of any sort. You are allowed to spray pesticides as an organic farmer.
Is there a waiting list to be at the farmer's market?
At the Athens Farmers Market?
Yeah.
Not anymore. I was like the last person to go through it. Now you can go to Wednesday anytime you want, and then you wait to get into Saturday. This is our main vegetable garden. We have two this size. You walked by one over there. It was between the blueberries, the young blueberries, and the raspberries. And one of the really important things for efficiency and labor is layout. Everything here is standardized. All the beds over there are 150 feet. Every bed here is 100 feet. That way, every piece of remay is 100 feet. And I know it takes 1 or 1.5 to cover bed. Every piece of row cover, etc. When I pick up hoops, I know it takes 25 to cover a bed. It just really speeds up the efficiency of labor. Also, this may look like a mess, but we just leave things where it's needed. So we have a header. The materials that are used are just left where they're going to be used, right? There's no point in me picking this up, putting it all the way away, and getting it out 3 days later, trying to find what it is. So I try and keep everything super simple. The planting blocks are divided into 7 equal blocks, each one 600 linear feet of bed space. The beds are about 30 inches wide. I don't really know how wide they are. They're wide enough that they fit between that tractor's tires, right? So standardize the equipment. We only use the tractor in here to spread compost. We don't till with the tractor. The bed prep here is all done with these tools right here, rakes, broad forks, and a wheel hoe. We also have a small tilther that we just got and haven't really used it, but it's inside. It runs on a battery-powered drill. But we want to disturb the soil structure as little as possible, so we don't rotivate with a big, heavy rotivator. We have one, but we only use it to like open up new bed space. Anytime you till, you're losing organic matter to oxidization. You're also inverting the soil structure. Just like there's a habitat out here where everything has a particular environment it wants to live in, soil organisms are the same way. If you take the stuff that lives on the surface and you put it 6 inches down, it's going to die. And that biology is really important to the health of the plants that we grow. So we call that what we do minimum tillage. We use the broad fork, this big tall thing, to loosen soil down low. We only broad fork every bed like once or twice a year, which is fine because we're not crushing it. We're not driving heavy equipment over it, right? Wheel hoe scuffs the surface, and then the rake smooths it, and that's it. Done. The other really, really important thing in our bed prep is tarping or occultation, which is the practice of preparing a bed till it's all the way ready to be seeded, and then covering it in a tarp for at least 2 weeks. The serious downside of this is that that's 2 weeks you're not growing in, right? So when I started, we did that to every single bed. Now, when I pull a crop out, I'm like, is there much weed pressure? So like this bed, when these beets come out, it'll probably just get planted right away. This bed over here, this will probably get a tarp, right? The benefit of the tarping is that when we pull that tarp back, it's a totally clean seed bed. You can get the same thing by rototilling. You can get it to look clean, but you've got a ton of seeds in there. There's dormant seeds. Everybody's heard the phrase 1 year seed, 7-year weed. The seeds can live in your soil for a long time. When you till, you can stir them up to the surface, give them this great environment to germinate in. So by tarping, we create an even better environment for them to germinate in because it's warm and moist. But when they germinate, they die. So then we pull that back, and there's no weed. So this is a bed I probably should have given up on. This was planted in March, and it hasn't been weeded ever, right? So even though it looks kind of weedy, that's pretty great. This was planted early April. Early April this was planted, and it's never been weeded, right? So we lose the 2 weeks of growing, but we gain a ton of time back because I don't crawl around on my knees weeding these. I will cultivate it once with a collinear hoe. So that's this guy right here. It's a really useful tool. Pretty low germination in this bed, but you can kind of like walking speed cultivate between rows of really young plants. So you can do the whole bed in like a couple minutes, right? The weed control is really important to being able to do this alone because we don't hand weed. I think this year I've hand weeded like 5 beds. Early spring we had some heavy weed pressure, but other than that, like we don't do it. And even if we get some weeds, like those beets with the weeds, not a big deal because the beets are going to come out well before the weeds go to seed. It's fine. Yeah, I hate weeding. I bet you do too. This plot already had fairly high organic matter. It's in kind of a wet spot.
11%.
There's a lot of anaerobic decomposition, which leaves less nutrients, less nitrogen, but more carbon in the soil, which is your organic matter. So when we started gardening here, the big battle wasn't upping the organic matter, it was draining it. So there's like a 6-inch drain tile that runs from about where you're sitting through and then down.
What kind of tarps are you using?
Great question. We have 2 different kinds. 3 if you count this stuff. those are old billboards. You see how it's yellow on the bottom? That's a McDonald's coffee commercial. It's really entertaining. I also have a New Kids on the Block billboard that I really like, and some other like ridiculous ones. They're super cheap. They come in like 48-foot lengths, which works for the 50-foot thing. I just cut them. The other ones, they're hiding over there. They're white and black silage tarps. You go black side up. They're pretty expensive, but they're huge. They're 100 by 50, so 2 of them cover this, right? And we'll do the same thing on the asparagus. In the winter, we'll cover the whole thing. It'll burn down any grass, any perennials, pull it off in the spring, and like stuff's happy. Also, the other huge benefit of this is in the spring, we had a warm spell in March, and I was like, hey, I'm gonna plant some stuff. You can't take a tractor out here in March, right? But you can just pull a tarp back and everything's ready. We use these walking push seeders here, right? This will go through mud, no big deal. Also, it's under a tarp, so it's not that wet. This is another seeder we use, is a 4-row pinpoint, right? So when you pull the tarps back, you're ready to plant, no problem. A lot of farmers around here are using a great practice of cover cropping, which adds extra organic matter to your soil, but if you were gonna take this out of a rye cover crop, you'd have to plow it, disc it probably twice. Not only would that take a lot of time and I'd have to wait for a good dry spell, I'd also lose all my raised beds. These things are permanent. I just kind of shovel them up maybe once a year. Because we have limited space, these beds allow us to pack stuff in. If we're tractor farming, I might be able to get 2 rows of beets in a bed, and then I could run a cultivator on my tractor over them. But with this, since I'm cultivating with this tiny tool, you know, we go 5 rows of beets, 6 rows of carrots to a bed, so we can pack a lot more plants into a smaller space.
All these tools would work just as well inside a large high tunnel, would
Absolutely.
they not? Yeah.
Yeah, no problem.
Where did you get the billboard?
Usedbillboards.com. Yeah.
The billboard and the silage tarp.
Uh-huh.
Do they let air and water through or not?
Nope, they don't. Some people are concerned about the soil health in that scenario, but I haven't observed any problems. You pull it back and there's worms rolling around in there. They're happy, they come to the surface, eat all the organic matter that you left up there. This tarp does let air and water through. You can even get fertilizer to go through these. I think UMass or University of Iowa did some research on that. I use these around my perennials. Some people call it like geotex. They use it on construction sites. It'll last 5 to 10 years depending on how you use it. We use it as an alternative to like the stretchy ag plastic. The benefits are I'm not throwing away a ton of plastic every year, and it's permeable, so that big rain, most of it went through this. Also, you can get it in wide enough pieces that it covers the footpaths. There's one more thing I'm not weeding, right? We're always looking for work that we don't have to do. This is your waste. This comes from Athens County, Athens Hocking solid waste. It's been finished at high temperatures, so it's really great. It's really easy to work with. And we go through like 50 yards every 2 years. Now that our organic matter has gotten up high, we're going to probably switch to something that's cheaper because it costs a lot to get it on site. But you can buy this in bulk for like $25 a yard. So this goes on in the spring as a sheet, and it has that same like weed suppressing characteristics as the tarp. You can just cover stuff up and don't disturb the soil, and you don't get as much of a direct nutrient boost if you're not tilling it in, but you get that weed suppression, and that's one of the biggest battles around here. I'm really excited about, but I haven't got to use yet, is biochar. Anybody know about biochar? This is like charcoal. It's pure carbon, and the cool thing about putting it in your soil, it's pure organic matter, but it's so inert that it won't volatilize out. So if you till, it doesn't disappear. At least it goes really, 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 really slowly. Some people have really presented it as like a cure-all, and it's not. But it is like pure carbon, and it has a really great structure to put into our clay soils. I'm starting to partner with a guy named Scott Bagley who makes this stuff. He makes it locally out of sawmill waste. And he also sells the kilns to make it to other sawmills, which is really cool because this is a material that's usually burned or just thrown in a ditch somewhere. But with the kiln, it gives the opportunity for these sawmills to produce this stuff and makes it locally available, and it's it's presented by some as like a carbon sequestration method, right? Instead of burning it, sending all the carbon up, you put it in a retort kiln where 90% of the carbon stays in the kiln, and then you put it in the soil and it just stays there pretty much forever. So he's selling these bags. I've got a bunch of them here if you want one. They're like 15 bucks, and this will cover like most of your home garden. And then these are 17, and they're half biochar and half compost. If you do use it, you want to mix it with something before you put it on, because you can kind of suck nutrients out of your soil essentially. Like it's a big old sponge. We practice old school organics where we're trying to get as much compost, as much carbon into the soil as possible before we worry about nutrients and things like that, because if we don't have the organic matter up, those things won't stick around.
Do you home test your organic matter?
I send it to a lab, Logan Labs. It's pretty expensive, but they give like a really great full readout of micronutrients. You can go to Shade River Ag, and for like 15 bucks, they'll give you a basic NPK and organic matter readout. If you haven't tested your soil and your gardening, you should.
What's the biological function of that when you put it in there?
Mostly it's a habitat, right? It's going to improve the tilth of your soil, and it's going to create all these places to retain water, and it's going to provide like little places for the microbes to hang out that you don't find in sand or clay.
What do you think about using a horse manure composted with straw as a soil amendment?
That's fine. I mean, we've used tons of manure here. The big challenge of bringing manure in, as we move towards certified organic, it gets harder because there's regulations on how long you have to age it. I haven't brought it in for a couple years, but I had a neighbor who had hundreds of tons of cow manure, and we brought a lot of that in. The big challenge with that on a scale like this is we also brought in weeds we'd never had before. Like, we don't really have a thistle problem. I'll find it here and there, but if you really want one, you know, some manures and hay mulch. You can see like there's an abandoned bale of hay mulch over there. We don't use it anymore because we were having such weed problems. So.
Well, I just have a small operation, and I have 3 stages of manure composting with straw, and I have had some weed issues with it, just starting out at using it in the greenhouse. But if I amend it with a good quality potting soil, that kind of helps.
The irrigation system is all overhead, and that's mostly a labor saver for me. Drip irrigation is way more efficient with your water, and that is an issue here of like draining our ponds that we irrigate out of. But overhead irrigation is much more efficient with my time, because there's 42 beds total, 100-foot beds on the farm of annuals. And when I worked at Green Edge, I overhead irrigated a lot with a hose to germinate things. Drip tape won't do that. So we'd plant, and then I'd overhead, and I would spend anywhere from like 30 minutes to an hour for every planting doing that. Each bed gets at least 3 plantings during the year, with the exception of like tomatoes and melons and things. And so it's another way that we've saved ourselves literal like entire work weeks of labor by not standing out here with a hose to water stuff in. Instead, I just plant on Mondays. Whatever's going to get planted that week goes in on Mondays, and then the whole garden gets watered. The other thing I wanted to mention is just what we grow in general, and it's mostly informed by what we can sell at a profit. So we need a diversity of crops, but we don't want to grow everything, right? We don't grow cabbage, we don't grow broccoli because people like them, but there's not enough product per square foot to justify it. So we try and stick to things that we know we can sell: salad mix, beets, carrots, peppers, flowers, beans, and ignore the things that we can't sell. We have a 100-foot bed over there that has leeks and winter squash and basil in it, and that's for us. We do compost. I do it like anaerobically. I just throw it in there. There's a bin over there. I put it in there. I don't turn it. It takes forever. And then I put it on my perennials. I don't measure the temperature. It's just pure laziness. We also send so much stuff off the farm that it wouldn't be realistic for us to ever produce all of our nutrients on farm. You look at the amount of pounds of product that are leaving, We just can't replenish a whole carrot bed with just the carrot tops. The amount we produce is tiny in comparison to the amount we need. The next thing we're going to do is crowd into this barn. A device called the CoolBot. It'll cost you $300, but it'll save you a ton of money in comparison to buying a commercial walk-in cooler. And it hijacks the AC unit to run to really low temperatures. So that room is like 10 by 5.5 or something. It's built out of insulation materials available at Lowe's, and it cools down to 40 degrees in like 20 minutes. The packing room is all like a clean space, so I'll open the doors, but we won't crowd in there. And we just have stainless steel sinks and countertops, white walls, classic kind of like kitchen feel. And then the one thing that's in there that's a little different, that's kind of fun, is there's a homemade salad spinner. So we harvest our salad out here with this device, and it runs on a drill, has an oscillating blade on the bottom. The ropes feed the salad back into the bag. You need to have a really clean, weed-free bed for this. And then we take it inside, we wash it, and we spin it dry. If you're having trouble with your vegetables spoiling in your cooler at home, it's probably because they're wet. So the salad spinner is a home-built spinner. It's made out of a repurposed washing machine and some totes, and it spins really, really fast. Rural Action made a video about the maple syrup we make here, so they want to show that. Go in and see the cooler and the salad spinner and stuff. You can do that just on my hands and knees with a knife, and now we just go like this. And we can stop the weed. It'll take like 10 minutes at the most. This is called a quick cuts. They're really ridiculously expensive in terms of like what you get, but in terms of labor saved, it's a great deal. It's almost $500, and it doesn't come with the drill. It's already saved me $500 worth of labor. So if you want to use it, the first half of this bed, feel free to cut it. Don't put it on the footpath. It's a bed that's already been cut off of, and it's done.
He keeps tomatoes because you don't want those ones that sold. So puts tomatoes in there, squash, and some other things. Place. It's not going right now.
I started out weighing 325 pounds, about 40 years. Ended up being diabetic, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, all those bad things that typically happen to people who go beyond the age of 21. I decided I wasn't going to spend my life on pills, I wasn't going to spend my life doing all that silly stuff.
We live in a place where it's really hard to grow organic apples. My advice to anyone who's thinking about starting a farm is like listen to the people who've worked around you, even if they sound like curmudgeons and they're telling you you can't do what you want to do. Farmers in general are really passionate and they get excited about these ideas like biodynamic or bionutrient or biointensive or restoration agriculture, permaculture. They get really excited about something that is a really valid, exciting way to grow things, but maybe not going to pay the bills. They're really excited about apple trees, and they're mostly dying. The perception is like if you grow organic fruit, you'll be able to grow it, it'll just be a little spotty. You know, it might not look as good. Not necessarily the case. Like, these trees got hit really hard by the cicadas, but additionally, they're mostly defoliated by apple scab, which is really hard to control for organically. What I should have done when I planted this orchard, instead of caring about a red, a yellow, a green variety, I should have just been looking for the disease-resistant varieties. The apple trees that are growing here are going to be removed, and we're replacing them with pears, which don't have as much of a problem. Peaches, that's kind of a gamble. And then this is a whole spindle apple planting that is using only like the most disease-resistant varieties. And we're also hedging our bets with some like full-size or they're 70% size disease-resistant varieties over there. The tall spindle system is really cool if you want to have a backyard planting and be really intensive. I don't know anybody else who's doing it around here, but the yields off this system are really huge. But the startup cost is really expensive because there's a tree planted every 3 feet. And these will be grown straight up, and then they'll be allowed to branch, and you'll treat them more like grapes, where you prune off branches after a couple of years of fruiting. You prune it in a way where the branch grows back. Instead of cutting it flush, you cut like a stump, branch grows back, and it continues to produce. The idea here is you're producing as much fruiting wood as possible with as little blind wood, which is the wood that doesn't fruit. Just take this scrawny, defoliated apples behind you and look at them. Like, most of it is trunk. That's not where the fruit's being produced. This is like a big lesson in being a beginning farmer. If you're a hobby farmer, which is totally valid, have fun. But if you want to pay bills, maybe start with something that's tried and true. So we're starting with vegetables. We want to transition to fruit. We're still holding on to this, but we're mostly transitioning to soft fruit, which we have a lot more success with. It's way more susceptible to infection, but the window is a lot smaller in which it can be infected. I only have to keep a blueberry fruit healthy for 2 months, a strawberry for 5 weeks, right? Whereas apples have to go through the entire season and not get a blemish. This whole area was tilled up last year, cover crop, and then I've planted clover in between. I try and plant clover anywhere I can for the bees and for the nitrogen fixing. The rows have drip irrigation. Every plant gets a lot of peat moss and compost, and in the fall before they're planted they need a good treatment of sulfur, preferably like the organic kind. It takes a while for it to get in the soil. We've got grapes out of sight, raspberries, and then this is our other, in the middle here, this is our other block. There's 3 600-foot sections of vegetables there, and that's where our strawberries are. The planting closest to us just went in this spring, and it'll fruit next year and the year after, and then it'll come out. The other one went in last year. It fruited this year, and it's gone through what's called renovation, which means it's been mowed and fertilized. So you see new leaves coming up. Also, there's blackberries over there. You bet.